Mr. Hempstead, item 7C1.
And fun here, too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first, I think this one's got lost a little in the shuffle and discussion in the last couple of weeks, too. As part of the process of approving the conceptual plans for the mall and the LDA, and that becomes the third portion of this, which is the Putman Urban Renewal Plan. It's the guidelines that have to be adhered to as they develop the mall. This is the third part of the puzzle. As promised, it was delivered by the end of this term. We worked closely again, and I hope that moving forward, whatever future councils are sitting here, a process that included joint meetings and a joint hearing with the redevelopment commission. I think it shortened up a lot of timelines by doing this, because this really didn't come up till about 2 months ago. I think for action, I took the first meeting in September, if I remember correctly, and we've got this done in less than 60 days. So with that, I think it has a lot of good points, good suggestions, good recommendations for GGP and anybody else within the area to work with. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the approval of the redevelopment agency's proposed modification to the Putman Urban Renewal Plan as they relate to parcels 1, 2, and 4 of the plan area, inclusive of the modifications to the design guidelines for these parcels.
Thank you, Mr. Hempstead. He's moved the item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Hempstead, item 7C2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll move the items, and then I'll reserve my comments after that, because there are an action and suggested amendments. The action is approve the modifying condition of the approval associated with the conceptual master site plan as submitted by the Land Development LLC and approved by the Common Council on October 6, 2015. The following conditions shall be deleted. It's action 1. Reduce the massing above North Water Street. The proponent will remove all parking from the easement area and reduce the building area above North Water Street in order to shorten the length of the covered pedestrian area at grade, minimal travel lanes to the intended parking resources to the north and the south of the site, and will be accommodated in the public easement area. That will be the removal of that from the LDA conditions. That the following conditions shall be included in the LDA, the conceptual master site plan and the LDA. The conceptual master site plan reflects a maximum of 303 linear feet of development area above North Water Street. The opening through the project is in the easement area of 31 linear feet for the purpose of providing natural light. Is considered an architectural feature which is not part of the ascribed maximum linear feet of the development allowed in the easement area. That is 1. And then I'm going to read what was in the packet, then offer amendment. Common Council and Redevelopment Agency will contract with a planning architectural firm to collaborate with GGP regarding the final design of the area underneath the overpass visible to pedestrians. Said collaboration shall commence immediately upon approval of the LDA CMSP and the Urban Renewal Plan by both the Common Council and the Redevelopment Agency. As part of the review process, the firm hired will issue a technical memo to the Common Council and the Redevelopment Agency. That memo will be filed with the Common Council and Redevelopment Agency for action within 15 business days of submission of the final design of the underpass area by GGP to the firm, provided said firm has previously signed off GGP's design at 25%, 50%, and 75% complete. If approved of the final design of this area, it is recommended by said firm, neither the Common Council nor Redevelopment will unreasonably withhold such approval. No action by either body within 15 business days of the firm's memo being filed with them will be considered an approval. Mr. Mayor, I'll move for that, then I'd like to move to make an amendment.
Mr. Hempstead has moved that. Move the amendment, please.
Okay. On the first sentence, where it starts to read under North Water Street pedestrian areas, remove the word Common Council and, that and being the word and, okay. redevelopment, redevelopment agency will contract with a planning architectural firm to collaborate with GGP regarding the final design of the area under the overpass visible pedestrians. The selection of said firm shall be advanced to the common council for approval prior to the execution of the contract by the redevelopment agency. That is one
Okay.
amendment. And the second amendment will be, as we move down to the, let's see, I want to get this beginning of the sentence. It presently reads, the memo will be filed with the Common Council Redevelopment Agency for action within 15 business days of submission of the final design of the underpass area by GBP to the firm, and that remains a period at that point.
Okay.
All right, and the subsequent language after that, GGP will endeavor to provide said firm with the property design plans at approximate 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%.
Just a correction, please. If not property, I think it was proposed.
Oh, proposed, I'm sorry.
100%.
I'm reading somebody else's
Handwriting.
handwriting, and you're right. Proposed design at the approximate 25, 50%, 75%, and 100% of completion,
Okay.
period. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move those two amendments, and then I'd just like to speak, if that's okay.
Okay, the items have been moved by Mr. Hempstead as amended. Mr. Hempstead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unlike DC, I think sometimes when people get together and work things out amongst ourselves, party, I think NOAA, in this case, has worked together to come up with finding an agreeable solution. I know not entirely agreeable by GGP, but I think it works for everybody. I think the concerns about the process being tied up, I think we're straightened out tonight. I know there was concerns about the conflicting of how you interpret things. I do agree, this is precedent setting. Mr. Cafaro, Attorney Cafaro brought that up, and it's precedent in a lot of other ways. This is the first time we've had a mall of 1 million square feet. It's the first time we've ever built over public right-of-way and a public street, especially a street that we just did. So I think the two blend together just properly. I think both are precedent setting, and I think both are being treated in a manner that probably will work for everybody. Just to the young lady that gave Mr. Kimmel an apple, I can tell you though, Granny Smiths make a great apple pie though. All right. Through this process, and I know the chagrin, again, I say chagrin to some others, and if you're not Irish, that means to the bother of others, and a whole bunch of other things. My total goal in all this process that we went through was to make sure everybody was informed. The mayor, to the council, to the attorneys, to the other side, to the public, most importantly, who we answer to. I think though it took a while to get here, and even through the secondary process, which only took a 2-week turnaround, I think shows that when there's willing partners on all sides, something can happen. It does not, and I urge the adoption of those changes. It does not take away mine, and I think some others that are still here, concerns about the length of the overpass and what it's going to come out with. Hopefully, that we can all be addressed what's here. But I think this is a good compromise, and I move for its adoption, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr.
Move
Hempstead.
the amendments for adoption.
Move the amendment. Mr. Kimmel.
Yes. Tonight, I support Mr. Hempstead's amendments, both of those. First, let me say that the concerns regarding the process down the road where GGP would have to constantly come back to the council, and we don't even know what the nature of the next council will be like. So we appreciate that concern, and I think this language addresses that issue. There will not be, the GGP will be working closely with the architectural firm that which will come on board to represent the city's interest. And so I'm confident that we will have a smooth process going forward. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding because the word design has been bandied about, and it's the appropriate word, but design means different things to different people. We're not concerned with micromanaging the process, talking about the types of trees, the color of the paint, the height of doors and things like that. We're not architects. We're not talking about design features. But we are talking about an area of the city which we are concerned about. We just approved a modified, a newer version of our urban renewal plan for SoNo, and but that's important. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of money making sure that part of the city moves in a direction that satisfies everybody. And we are concerned with placing a mall right in the center of that, something we didn't plan for years ago. And so when we talk about design, we're really talking about connectivity and making sure that we still maintain a coherent whole, that the mall does not become a barrier between different parts of the city. And that's been our concern all along. Hasn't got to do with micromanaging colors and things and materials and things like that. And so I think it's only fair to set a precedent by including the council down the road, because we do want to make sure that everything we've worked for to create this integrated whole in South Norwalk and the ability of folks to get into South Norwalk and out of South Norwalk, and for people to live comfortably in and around South Norwalk. We want to make sure that this dovetails with everything we've worked for over the last few years. So I think that's what we've been talking about all along, and I support that amendment, and I think the architectural firm that we bring on board has that same vision that we have. I want to mention another thing. There's been a lot of discussion here about, parking. And I always joke around, you can't do anything in this city, any project, anything, no matter what it is, even outdoor dining, without discussing parking. We always get bogged down in parking, no matter how you cut it. And the irony is, we're trying to create, a city where there's more pedestrian friendly, okay? But all we do is talk about parking. Anyway, we have a road running right through this mall, North Water Street. That created a real problem, architecturally for us and financially for Bloomingdale's. From their perspective, they made some interesting points, okay? They're across the street from the rest of the mall, and they don't want everybody going to park in one direction while their store is over here. They don't want people driving in another direction. So we had to really dig into this issue and figure out how we're going to deal with it. And on the one hand, we told Bloomingdale's and GGP, we want a mall that is financially viable, that's going to be with us, and it's going to be a Class A mall, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. When Bloomingdale's saying, well, then give us the wherewithal to do that, okay? Create the kind of parking that we need, okay? So we found ourselves in a corner. And I think this solution really serves everyone's interests, and I'm glad we finally resolved this serious parking issue. Finally, I want to commend Mr. Hempstead, the committee, everybody else in the city. We spent a lot of time on this. It was very, very difficult. But it looks like, it is still October, and here we are voting on it. And just one final point. It's true, 40 years ago, Reed Putnam was being discussed. We're moving forward on that. It's great, okay? Wall Street, flood was like 60 years ago. We're moving forward on that. Great. I remember in 1990s coming onto the council, and we were trying to develop West Avenue with Stanley Salixon's projects, and there was all kinds of financial issues with collaboration with the state, the city, and Salixon's properties. And we never got anywhere, and the economy turned. But we're moving on Wall Street. Not what we envisioned for West Avenue, not what we envisioned for Reed Putnam, but things are moving in those areas. And I think the city is really alive now, and this is just terrific. I wholeheartedly support these, both of Mr. Hempstead's amendments. And again, I want to applaud him for dealing with a very, very difficult situation, having to deal with some very stubborn council members, and he handled it nicely. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely going to support these amendments and the underlying condition modification. And I think it's fair to say that this project has received a huge amount of scrutiny, and that's because it should. The people of the city have all along expected us to be their eyes, ears, voices, and to make sure this is done right. And I think it's safe to say that we're there. And before, it was Mr. Cafaro who said that the area under the overpass is the front door to the mall. And I think it's safe to say that no one on the city side, the redevelopment agency side, or certainly on GGP's side, wants the experience at the front door to be a bad one. So I think that the concern that's been placed on this issue was appropriate, and now that we've come to some amount of resolution and a way forward, that's exactly what will happen. In a smooth and orderly fashion over the design process, we'll get to where we should be. And as was previously said, it's not something of inches and feet, but of that overall look and feel. And I think that the end result will have been worth this extra 2 weeks of discussion. And again, I would like to commend everyone that participated in that on both sides, because even with the communication snafus, et cetera, we did get here on time and at the appropriate decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Mr. Igneri.
I'd like to commend the committee as well. I'm not on the committee, and yet I spent hours today going over this amendment. And I can't imagine how much time this committee has spent over this term trying to get it to this point. So I thank you. I thank every one of you, and I fully support the amendment and the mall. Thank you.
Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to echo what a lot of my colleagues said here tonight. It has been a long process, and we have focused on this mall deal for quite some time. And you know, I really have to commend my colleagues, especially on the planning committee, chaired by Mr. Hempstead, that we vetted this back and forth and through committees, back to the council. And we wanted to get it right, and, this project is going to be in the heart of South Norwalk, and that's a district that myself and Faye Bowman represent. And we can be more happy and more pleased to have this project moving forward, especially in this time. As you know, that site has been dormant for many, many years, and we're finally at a place where we're going to really start getting the feet, the hooks in the ground, and really get shovels in the ground and get things moving here. And I really want to commend GGP and Doug Hempstead for staying vigilant and dedicated to this project and to this city, and really making sure that this project is going to be one of the best A-class malls if not in the state, in the country. And I really appreciate that. I really want to, again, just thank the mayor, thank the colleagues, and more importantly, thank the citizens for sticking by us and through this whole ordeal. But we're finally here. And again, just thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Mr. Petrini.
I'm going to make this very, very brief. I just want to make a couple comments, and as you all know, I'm not running, so I really don't have anything to lose to say what I have to say. And I'm just going to have to say it. Washington, D.C., I want you to look at me. Hartford, Connecticut, look at me. This is what you get as a result when you take the Democrats and the Republicans out of an equation. This whole process that has been going on had nothing to do with politics. You've had almost an equal body here representing the city of Norwalk. And not once did I hear, they're doing this for this advantage or whatever. This was all worked, and it was hard work by everybody here. And believe me, if you weren't on the committee, you still worked on it. Had to do for the people of Norwalk. I'm not going to go into the virtues of the mall. I think you all know how I feel. The marketing ideas, the thing that they can bring here to tie in this, it's going to be a great thing. We came to an impasse a couple weeks ago. We listened, we worked it out, talked to everybody, and I believe we have a deal. But I just have to say something about the chairman of planning, because all along the way, it almost seems like there might have been some kind of an agenda or what was going on. And I have to tell you something. For the 11 months that he's been dealing with this, and you've got some very intelligent people on this council, some worldly people on this council, I would venture to say that there's not one person on this council that could have handled this situation better than our Doug Hempstead with the negotiations. Never faltering, and always knew it's not what he wanted, it's what we wanted. And he took it to the end. And if you thought he took a long time, take a look at some of these other big developments that we've had in the city that never got off the ground back in 2007 and thereabouts. It was because the Common Council had to deliberate to death and you blew a market. That's not one thing Doug did not do. So for all of you that might have think there was something going, it was done right. We protected the citizens of Norwalk and got a great partnership with a great company in here. And I know you all thank Doug, but you really think down hard and really thank him because you did a tremendous job. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Mr. Kites, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Jerry. That was very heartfelt. And thank you, Doug. I just quickly wanted to say, for every planning meeting I sat in on, and there were many of them, I'm always thinking of my kids and the Norwalk that's going to be left to them after I'm gone, because the Kites men do die young.
What's central?
I'm just being,
Take too long.
I'll be even quicker with this. And
Maybe I'm guaranteed a spot then.
and when Africa was, oh yes, so as who knows what Norwalk will look like in 10, 20 years. I can only imagine it just being that much more developed. And since this project started, connectivity, that was like the major focus, and I appreciated that because I know with more development, people are going to be walking, riding bikes, and I can't say I'm not disappointed that this overpass hasn't been reduced, because I did think that would have an effect on pedestrian traffic to the back. But I'm going to take GGP's word for it, Larry Farrow's word for it. Please focus on access from the mall to SoNo, SoNo to the mall, because I think this is going to be there far longer than I will. So thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I will just echo many of the comments here tonight. Thank you to the members of the Common Council. Thank you to my corporation counsel who worked extremely hard on this. Thank you to GGP for always having an open door and listening and coming in and talking about your concerns. This is truly a collaboration. Thank you, Mr. Hempstead, for your diligence and your efforts. We've had some very robust discussions, to say the least. I don't know how many hairs were pulled out of our heads,
All
but
mine.
And half of mine.
To get it done right takes time, and you make sure that you vet it properly, as Mr. Sims said. So I echo everybody's comments here. Thank you so much. This is an amazing project. This is a turning point for Norwalk. We're going to see some wonderful things coming down the pike, and I'm excited. So thank you all, and if there are no further comments, I will call the vote. With the amendment, as amended by Mr. Hempstead. Unless you want a roll call vote, I'll just say, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't think so. Abstentions?
Shopping.
Yes, Mr.
I have a question. Did we vote on the amendments? And
Yes.
now we have to vote, do we now have to vote on the floor?
It was moved as, it was amended as it was moved.
It was a friendly. There's two things.
No, that's already, yes.
Sorry, I need a suspension of rules to take up a one-word change,
Yes, you're correct.
okay?
So Mr. Hempstead has asked for a suspension of the rules.
This is for to the amendment to the land disposition development agreement.
Right, page 12, I believe.
That is correct, actually 11 to
11 and 12. Okay, Mr. Hempstead is asking for a suspension of the rules to amend the land disposition agreement that was approved at the last council meeting, and we're talking about page 11 and 12. All in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Hempstead.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This was brought up by our attorney. It starts on page 11 as item 14 circulatory, but the language change is on the top of page 12. It presently reads in receipt of final zoning approvals. Strike out the word zoning and put land use approvals as the alternate.
Okay, so that is moved by Mr. Hempstead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carries. Thank you, Mr. Hempstead.